innovative approach, not only leveraging Ranger Captain of Eos, Dreadhorde Arcanist in the mix too, a card I absolutely love, not only in Modern but also in Legacy. Extremely powerful.
Super powerful. It's always a question of, is this card just too slow and fragile? Right? Like, if everyone shows up with their Fatal Pushes and Lightning Bolts, you'd much rather have a Snapcaster Mage than this thing.
Absolutely. Speaking of showing up with Fatal Pushes and Lightning Bolts, 2 Fatal Push and 4 Path to Exile in this Mardu deck. No Lightning Bolt. Passing on Lightning Bolt. Interesting. I mean, think about the sizing of Hogak. Makes Lightning Bolt looks pretty silly. You really want big removal in Path to Exile, and also in this matchup, in the Izzet Phoenix matchup, you're very happy to have Path to Exile instead.
It is kind of funny because we've seen these ebbs and flows of the threats in Modern change over time.
Yep.
And there have been other points where Lightning Bolt was very mediocre. When Death Shadow was the biggest thing that people were doing, Lightning Bolt just wasn't that good lining up against Death Shadow, against 5/5s that people are paying 1 mana for. You know, it wasn't the best answer in that format, and we might be getting back there again.
Quite possibly. Bertarioni just playing a Silent Clearing, another new card from Modern Horizons, one of those Horizon lands, and passing the turn back. So, slow start for this Mardu Death Shadow list, but in a matchup where it can afford to have such a start. Meanwhile, Mason Clark on Izzet Phoenix played this deck for a little while. Mason was one of the Amuleters. It seems like all of the Amulet folk have fled to Izzet Phoenix, I think correctly so. Nobody loves Amulet as much as I do, but it's time to put away the Primeval Titans for a little while this format gets itself sorted out.
You are an Amulet aficionado.
Absolutely.
And you're saying that, you know, the Mardu Death Shadow deck can afford to be a little bit slower against the Izzet Phoenix deck. You know, I think I disagree with you on that point. The Izzet Phoenix deck just gets better and better every turn of the game that it gets to play.
Well, that's a fair point, but I think this Mardu Death Shadow deck is looking to do similar things. With Ranger Captain of Eos on Earth, you just kind of have this inevitability where you can play a game that goes quite long. The question is, are you going to be able to contain the threats of the Izzet Phoenix deck? And here you see 3 mana being tapped on the part of Bertarioni, taking a little damage here. Worth noting that when you want to damage yourself, these Horizon lands have a little bit extra utility in your deck. And here comes that Ranger Captain of Eos that's going to go searching through the library, grabbing predictably a Death Shadow. There is 1 copy of Giver of Runes in the deck as well that Ranger Captain can grab. It'll be interesting to see if there's a spot where Ranger Captain's second ability comes into play. Its ability to sacrifice to prevent an opponent from playing spells on a turn.
Yeah, and obviously against an opponent that just has piles of instants, it's not as good. You sacrifice it in response to the ability. They cast whatever instance they want to play. But it does shut off all the sorceries and is potentially a time walkish card if they need it to be.
You could respond to this Manamorphose as well while your opponent has no mana. And, and you know, that cuts them off. There's windows. I'm not saying he should have. I'm just saying Ranger Captain of Eos more flexible.
Cash that thing in now.
Just use it, yeah.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
There's more. Don't worry about it. Here's another Manamorphose.
Another opportunity to sack the Ranger.
Think about it again. Look, it's just going to get lightning bolted here anyway. Why not?
Well, lots of free spells out of Mason this turn.
Absolutely.
So we'll see if you can find some Phoenixes.
Well, here's a Thought Scour. That's going to whiff on Phoenixes. I believe we still have red mana floating with Faithless Looting in hand. There is Faithless Looting. Going to take a look at 2 more cards. Can we find a Phoenix? I don't think we did.
And this is... occasionally, this is the story of the Phoenix deck, right? When it sees 2 to 3 Phoenixes in the top 20 cards, it just feels like
busted.
It's so unfair.
Yep.
But when it doesn't find them, it feels so frustrating.
It does. Yeah, decks in Modern quite often have a fail state, and there's kind of no middle ground. When a deck in Standard has a fail state, you're just not playing your best game plan. You're still putting creatures on the battlefield. You're still interacting in meaningful ways. You're just not doing your best things. When a deck in Modern fails, it does nothing.
See, and that's actually that's one of the reasons the Hogak deck is so ridiculous, right?
Exactly.
It has this insane combo where it can just beat people on turn 2. But then its fail state is still this aggressive board where it gets free 4/3s out of the graveyard and potentially plays Hogak for no mana.
Completely agree. One of the unspoken upsides. Ranger Captain going to go on the offensive, doing 3 damage. We're going to do a little fetching, a little shocking, and that's going to pave the way for Death's Shadow to enter the battlefield should Bertarioni choose.
Real big shadow.
The biggest of shadows. Look, I know how these shadows go. A little shadow grows up to be a big shadow someday.
The sun is setting.
Yeah, quickly ends an opponent's life. Bertarioni considering options here. What do you think about this Mardu Death Shadow deck in general as a response to Hogak? Because obviously that's what informed this choice. They have to think they have a positive Hogak matchup if they're bringing this deck to the table.
Well, it's a little wild to me for anyone to want to beat Hogak. The deck's just so good, right? If I was playing in this event, I would be playing Hogak.
Yeah.
I just couldn't find a reason not to do that.
I agree with you. I think it was just the correct call.
I do like just exploring these new avenues. Like you were saying, Ranger Captain, Modern Horizons card. You also got the Horizon lands. It's a reason to transition the Death Shadow deck from one set of colors to another. Mm-hmm. And I really like people exploring it. I feel like these decks are all good and close, but maybe not quite there, and especially not in the Hogak world that we live in.
Here's a Surgical Extraction from Bertarioni. Don't know exactly what we're targeting. We'll get that figured out at some point. Sounds like Faithless Looting is the target. Going to go ahead and take those out of Mason's deck. Interestingly caught with 2 copies of Manamorphose in hand. Could have sniped those out had he chosen that card, but that's kind of a ridiculous name, quite frankly.
Well, and they would have just gotten cast and cycled,
sure,
right?
Yeah. Fair point.
You want to do it during the draw step so that you have the most amount of chances of them having these cards in their hands.
Absolutely.
But when it's an instant, obviously they'll just cast it.
Yeah, could have cut off Mason from mana for the turn, but I think Faithless Looting unquestionably the right call here.
There's some super interesting cards that Mason could draw here.
I'm thinking of one in particular.
Yeah, so we're both thinking the same card here. Obviously, if he draws an Aria of Flame,
oh my goodness,
it just kills both of the Death Shadows.
What a beating that would be.
And then it sets up his hand very nicely to just burn out the opponent.
Here's a second copy of Surgical Extraction. Let's see what that's going to be pointed towards. It looks like it is going to be Manamorphose this time.
Okay. So he's kind of putting him to the test.
Right, forcing him to spend his mana on his draw step.
Yep.
I think I like that play quite a bit, actually. Could also cash in that Ranger Captain. I'll mention that one more time. I don't think we're going to do that here.
All right, and he's probably going to draw a bunch of cards, off of these Manamorphoses, which is why we see the proper shuffling of the deck.
Correct. I think it's interesting to see a Death Shadow revival at the time when what's clearly the number 2 deck in the format, and definitely in the room today, without question, is it Phoenix going to be the second most represented deck, I think.
With Aria Flame.
With Aria Flame.
Yep.
Most decks now up to 3 copies in the main deck. That's a problem card for Death Shadow in multiple ways. It's not only that it wipes your Death Shadows, it's also just a very effective card against this kind of strategy.
Yes. Until you play with or against Aria Flame or you watch some matches with it, he's going to let them... Okay.
No, just going to let it resolve.
Okay.
Thinks he needs mana on this turn.
Aria Flame, until you play with or against it or you watch some games, you don't realize just how quick that card turns games around. You're like, give him 10 life. That's a lot. But these decks play so many free spells, they cast so many 1-mana spells that the life does not matter.
Here's 2 copies of Thing in the Ice for Mason, and that is why we declined to play Manamorphose. He's all in on this plan. Now I think this Ranger Captain decision actually could get interesting on the next turn. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now we're dealing with 4/4 Death Shadows on Bertarioni's side. What else does he have to offer on this turn? Of course, with 2 Horizon lands just sitting there, can alter life totals pretty much at will. Or excuse me, only 1 Horizon land, only the Silent Clearing. Going to cash that in for a card, though. What's the draw here? fact that this deck gets to play 4 copies of Silent Clearing, pretty incredible, quite frankly.
Yeah, we were talking about how good these lands were for the burn deck, the Horizon lands. This same deck, same thing going on here. This deck is interested. The burn decks don't care that they lose the life. This deck actually wants to lose the life, so it's even more of an upside.
Yep. Here come the beats from those Death Shadows. Looks like we're going to put a block out on the Ranger Captain, and Mason going to take 8 here, falling down to 7. I am very interested into how Bertarioni plays this next turn. Consulting with teammates here.
Yeah, this is kind of wild because he's at 9 life. So if this thing in the ice flips, we also know there's 2 lightning bolts on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Just throw them at Bertarioni's face, and then...
I really like this. Cashing in the spell bomb right away. That Lava Dart was a free spell, and he only has 2 red sources. So if he uses it here, it jams him up on casting his lightning bolts next turn.
Yeah, really heads-up play from Jeremy there. Passes the turn back to Mason. What can Mason find? Drew another red source. I think just 2 lightning bolts red source?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think with Faithless Looting out of the deck, I like the way Bertarioni played this. Not cashing in Ranger Captain. Really not too many sorceries you're shutting down. Just the Serum Visions at that point. How many copies of Sleight of Hand does Mason have in his list at this point? Or is he an opt person? He's got a split. 2 opt, 2 Sleight of Hand. Just not too many sorceries you're really shutting down. Finale of Promise, the other one. So I do like how Jeremy played these turns.
Sure, yeah, and the Finale, obviously once you eat the graveyard, you're not worried about shutting him out with the Ranger Captain.
Absolutely. Here's a Lightning Bolt on 1 Death Shadow. Here's a Lightning Bolt on that same Death Shadow. That's going to hit the bin. Thing in the Ice sits at 2 counters. Mason with a Soul Mountain in hand. Can Jeremy make this attacking force lethal? Can he find removal for the Thing in the Ice? I think the draw was Fatal Push there. Nope, it's Inquisition of Kozilek. Going to take a look at that mountain. Nothing to be afraid of.
So a fetch land would force a chump block on the Death Shadow, right? Mm-hmm. But as it stands, Mason's just going to block this Ranger Captain again and take the damage.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Ooh.
Godless Shrine. Not enough to force the chump. Some results from our other matches. You see Daniel Duffee, Humans versus Bridgevine, taking down Dominic Harvey. Humans putting up some resistance against the Hogak threat. 2 games to none.
So did he pay the 2 life here? We'll get that updated. It looks like an untapped land, right?
I believe so.
So that's kind of wild to me because he puts himself in range of the flip
crackback
Thing in the Ice. So his plan has to be sacrifice Ranger on your upkeep.
Yeah, I
right? Like
think so. But here's the draw.
He's playing a dangerous game here.
Yeah, I don't know about that decision. Does not come back to bite him, though, as Mason Clark unable to find anything off the top of the library. Really interested to hear Jeremy's reasoning there. I mean, damage not super relevant at that point. The extra 2 points didn't really affect the clock in a meaningful way.
So I guess so the opponent has to cast 2 spells in order to flip this Thing in the Ice.
Right.
So you can sit on your Ranger, and if you cast 1 spell, you can respond to it. Any cantrip, you can respond to it and say you can't cast another spell.
Okay.
Which works there. So I can see the line that he took.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and look at sideboards here for both of our players. Over on Jeremy Bertarioni's side, you're looking at 4 Yixlid Jailer, 4 Lingering Souls. Haven't seen that card with a prominent role in a while. 3 Plague Engineers, 1 Shenanigans, 1 Gideon Ally of Zendikar, 1 Grim Lavamancer, and 1 Celestial Purge. Craig, what do you like here from Jeremy's side?
So it's funny because the Izzet Phoenix deck is going to be one of the biggest decks in our metagame right now. My expectation going in was that Hogak would be the biggest and Izzet would be number 2. And it potentially Izzet's the biggest and Hogak is number 2 just from what I've seen watching matches today.
Maybe.
Obviously, we'll have definite numbers for our fans and viewers later.
Yep.
But this sideboard to me does not look great against the Izzet deck, the Phoenix deck. And so I like Celestial Purge is fine at removing a Phoenix.
Right.
You know, do you want this Grim Lavamancer? That doesn't seem that good to me.
No, me neither.
But I mean, I don't want to play these Jailers.
Are you bringing in Lingering Souls?
That just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Against Thing in the Ice?
Against Thing in the Ice. Yeah, so this is a stranger sideboard to me.
Well, I wonder if they feel so favored in their default configuration, they think they can just take on the Phoenix deck heads up. That would be pretty incredible. We haven't seen, since Phoenix rose to prominence, we haven't seen many decks that can really take it on just on its own terms. You need some dedicated focus on the Phoenix decks to get your matchup favorable. Really interesting stuff. Over on Mason's side, looking at his sideboard, we do see 1 Blood Moon, 1 Surgical Extraction, 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Abrade, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Force of Negation, love that card, 2 Saheeli, 2 Ravenous Trap, and finally 1 Crackling Drake. What do you want to do if you're over on Mason's side?
So I wonder if he just wants to transition into a much more controlling deck and bring in a lot of these control-ish cards like Abrade, cards like Saheeli, the Crackling Drake. You're going to play a longer game. I even like the Blood Moon here. Like
two basics in Jeremy's deck.
Yeah, 2 is not a lot. And the early fetch lands, they're always looking to deal themselves damage and fix their mana early. So a lot of times you can catch these 3-color decks with their pants down, so to speak, and you just Blood Moon them on 3, and they have trouble casting spells for the rest of the game. So it'll be interesting to see if he wants to go this controlling route with the gotcha card in the Blood Moon, or if he just sticks to the more streamlined version of his deck. In order to bring in lots of these cards, you have to start shaving a lot of the cards from the deck, and then you're not as consistent as you would want to be. So there's always the argument with the Izzet Phoenix deck of, hey, only bring in 2 or 3 cards and not water things down.
It'll be interesting to see what approach Mason takes. I want to bring up, too, Death Shadow kind of rose back up at the height of Izzet Phoenix's dominance, Grixis Death Shadow, as a way to possibly punish them. There was some debate as to which deck was actually favored. Both sides felt they were favored. But one of the things you saw, the dynamic in that match, was that Izzet Phoenix had sizing problems. It was unable to deal with just the raw size of Death Shadow. They didn't have appropriate removal for that.
Yep.
All that's changed now just because they have Aria Flame. They have an out to these big Death Shadows. Obviously not the very largest one. If they're at 1 life and you play Aria, they get to keep their Death Shadows. But you're at least bringing them in bolt range. And I think Aria really an important wrinkle in this matchup. It'll be interesting to see if that comes into play. If you want to see more of this matchup, and obviously all the matchups in all the formats, you know where you have to go. It's Versus Live, where our SCG personalities battle the best decks in every format. Sometimes they even make up formats. No Ban Modern, all kinds of crazy stuff you'll see over on SCG Live. Always testing out the latest and greatest decks. I make it a point to tune in every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. You find it right where you're at presently, twitch.tv/SCG Tour. Big Versus Live fan. It's a nice way to fill my afternoons on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
You're just lounging around your place in your sweatpants and catching Versus Live and ordering foils online.
First of all, Craig, I will tell you that by 1 o'clock, I have probably already worked out and gone for a run today. So I've accomplished something. And then I put on my sweatpants, and then I get on the couch, and I look at foils, and I watch Versus Live.
Sure.
So you're basically spot on.
Tough life, man.
I am a Magic content creator, Craig. I am working all the time while I'm watching Versus Live.
Yeah. When you're at the gym, you're thinking about it.
Thinking about Magic, absolutely.
And
100%.
The checks show up in the mail.
Right. Hashtag blessed. I do get to do what I love. I make light of it, but it's sweet to be able to think about Magic and talk about Magic all the time. And Versus Live definitely part of that routine.
Good for you, man.
Thanks. I appreciate
Good
that.
for you.
Players still shuffling up here for game 2. As we said, a quick result over in our first match. Daniel Duffee taking down Dominic Harvey. I hate to see Dom Harvey get punished because I think Dom is a tremendous player, and I think he's tremendously creative as well. Always willing to bring a new deck to the table, sometimes to his detriment. And I've often encouraged him to just kind of revert to some best deck thinking and bring the best deck to the table.
Sure.
He brought Bridgevine this weekend. I'm really proud of him. Unfortunately, picking up a loss against humans in his match.
Well, that's the way it goes sometimes.
Absolutely.
The Bridgevine deck does have a fail rate, and the humans deck is occasionally just so blisteringly fast that it punishes the slower draws out of some of these decks. Dominic Harvey did take me down in the top 8 of Star City Games regionals.
Okay.
So
what was he playing in that instance?
Your baby.
Which one?
You only have one baby.
I have so many. I have too many babies, actually. Amulet, I'm assuming?
Amulet.
Okay.
And with lots of white cards in it.
Okay. Yeah, Dom with some crazy takes on Amulet. First to bring Coalition Relic to the table, which turned out to be an important ad. Also some crazier ads such as Through the Breach, Wayward Swordtooth.
Yep.
All kinds of crazy stuff. Meanwhile, in our match at hand, Mason Clark going to be on the play, leading with Serum Visions. There you see Bertarioni leading on Blood Crypt, taking a little damage. Going to play a Mishra's Bauble, send the turn back to Mason.
I think he's just taking a peek before he decides what he wants to do.
Here's Inquisition of Kozilek. You are correct. There you see in hand for Mason,
Whoa.
Aria of Flame, and with very little hesitation, Bertarioni reaching for that card. That's a problem for these Death Shadow decks.
And every card in this hand is a problem.
Yeah, you're right.
Over the next couple of turns, if the Izzet Phoenix player draws lands, he's happy with that, right? And if he's not drawing lands, he's probably drawing cantrips because that's
that's left.
Half of his deck.
Yeah.
There are some bad draws if he draws a bunch of Phoenixes or some more Thing in the Ices. He doesn't want these clunky spells. He already has a mass of those in his hand.
Right.
But most of his draws are just looking great here. Lands and cantrips are going to just turn on this hand. He already has the Finale, which makes flipping the Thing in the Ice just a breeze.
Yeah, and actually it is going to be a Thing in the Ice. That leaves Mason's hand. Bertarioni saying, I can beat Aria Flame.
Oh.
Here's Thing in the Ice. The draw off the top looked like Manamorphose.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, basically exactly what you wanted to sign up for. So turn heads back to Bertarioni. I saw a Dreadhorde Arcanist in hand. Interesting to see if we see that deployed here. Maybe go to work with those Inquisition of Kozileks. Cycling Street Wraith, though, is first order of business. Second land is Basic Plains, and Dreadhorde Arcanist going to enter the battlefield. Passes the turn back to Mason Clark. Mason takes a draw. There's an island. You mentioned not many bad draws off the top of the deck.
Yep. And I would expect the Aria to come down this turn.
I think so.
And
you're right.
Everything's just going to be set up moving forward.
There is Aria Flame. Bertarioni rising up to 26 points of life. Maybe not thrilled about that, though.
Well, he does get to strip another card out of the opponent's hand, which is super important when he's working with the board that he has, the
Sure.
Aria and the Thing in the Ice.
Absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see if he wants the Finale or if he wants the Manamorphose.
Yeah, just in the dark, I'm guessing Finale, but obviously that all depends on what's in Bertarioni's hand, how he's trying to play this game.
I mean, potentially if he has multiple discard spells, it actually starts looking real good for him.
Maybe. I will tell you, I have some experience casting Dreadhorde Arcanist. It gets out of hand very quickly. Here's Inquisition of Kozilek. There's the 3-card hand from Mason Clark.
Yeah, if you're saying, hey, you're not going to draw a land or you're not going to draw another red mana source, then you want to strip this Manamorphose. It might just be the most unfair card in the deck.
Yeah.
But on the flip side,
it's a high-risk play, though, to take the Manamorphose
if you take the Manamorphose, he peels the red source, he's just going to go off next turn with the Finale anyway.
Right. And it looks like the choice is going to be Finale. Here's Fatal Push, dealing with that Thing in the Ice.
Okay, I like all of this so far.
Yeah, we've done a good job dealing with threats on Mason's side. Here's another Arcanist, but there's that Aria Flame problem.
Well, also the Arcanists have nothing to cast right now.
Like only Fatal Push in the bin.
I don't think he wants to cast the Fatal Push on this board.
Nope, not going to get any work done here.
But it's the potential, right?
Oh, Mason found a land.
That opens up the whole hand.
It does. Certainly glad we took that Finale now, but still a fine spot for Mason.
And on the other side, Jeremy's going, just give me another discard spell.
Here's that Crackling Drake.
or a fetch land to turn on the Fatal Push.
Yeah, I think that's what you're really looking for here if you're Bertarioni. Going to take a draw. Let's see what he finds.
Maybe all of the above. Doesn't have to be a fetch land. It could be a Horizon land.
Sure, good point. Looks like we have Faithless Looting to start. Going to take a look at 2 cards off the top.
That's a great start, actually. Look at tons of options. Another card you can flash back with the Arcanist.
Yep. We pitch 2, and looks like we have a land. There's not many that don't go get something here. Could be Horizon. Could be a fetch land. Just don't want a shock or a basic. It's a fetch land. Big get for Jeremy.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, going to be able to bring back that Faithless Looting for another cast as well.
Yeah, there's a question of...
Do you want to?
Yeah, the last card in his hand could be quite good, and he just doesn't want to cast this turn. But that still leaves the Faithless Looting just sitting around to be cast later.
Yeah, fine spot to be in. Follow-up Ranger Captain. Oh, boy.
Okay.
Giver of Runes going to be the get here. Makes sense. Life total pretty high. No real way to bring it back down.
And I like this, but there's still that Aria Flame.
Yeah.
There's still tons of time. This clock isn't super fast. It's going to take 2 more turns of attacking.
Yep.
So it's funny that this game seems to have broken Jeremy's way very well, and it could just the rails can come off at any second.
Mean, the game could end this turn, quite frankly.
Yep.
Because here's Metamorphose, and I think there may be a second copy in hand as well. Sleight of Hand is the draw. Thought Scour in hand. Another Metamorphose. We're casting at least 4 spells this turn, and I honestly think this turn may end with Jeremy dead. You have to think about cashing in that Ranger Captain in response to that Metamorphose.
Yeah, now you say that, but that's his whole clock, right? Like
sure.
The 2-1.
Sure, but I think he's just
attacking.
Dead. I think he's just dead regardless. I understand what you're saying, but this looks like a wrap, quite frankly. Sleight of Hand resolves. Here's Thought Scour for you.
Jeez.
This card is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Bin 2. A Phoenix.
I mean, this is just bonkers. Just starting the turn with 2 cards and Aria.
Yeah, this is lethal.
And
Lightning Bolt, Spell Pierce my Lightning Bolt.
Yep.
And that is going to be the game for Mason Clark.
Ridiculous.
There is a camp that believes you should be playing Pyromancer Ascension over Aria of Flame. And to them, I say, you're crazy.
Sure.
Just absolutely crazy.
Well, even contextually within the metagame, you're opening yourself up to just all the graveyard hate that people are running around with.
Exactly.
Aria of Flame doesn't care about that at all.
Yep. Yeah, an impressive display from Aria of Flame. It even, didn't matter, but it forced Jeremy to go get Giver of Runes as opposed to Death Shadow to make a clock. Like, just an incredible, incredible card. And
yeah.
I don't think we've seen the last of it yet either. I think it's potentially rejuvenating for Storm as well, which is a deck that's really fallen out of favor recently, in part because of its reliance on the graveyard.
Sure, yeah, I can see these decks moving to 4 Aria of Flame at some point.
Maybe.
Especially if the format slows down just that little bit.
Right.
People are going to start showing up with more reactive cards, more creature removal, and then you're just like, Aria of Flame.
Yeah. As you mentioned, one of the high points of this Phoenix deck is its ability to just have multiple game plans. It used to be they were all kind of interwovenly dependent on the graveyard. Crackling Drake broke that a little bit.
Yep.
But you had some problems when your opponent effectively leylined you or in other ways dealt with your graveyard.
Yep.
Aria Flame just dealt with that. That's over now. And it also takes away the homogenization that your deck used to require of you, which I think is a really subtle but important feature of Aria Flame. When you're playing Pyromancer Ascension, you're priced in basically to playing all 4 ofs. And with Aria Flame, you have far more flexibility. That's reflected in Mason Clark's deck. You see 2 Flame Slash, 1 Lava Dart, 2 Op, 2 Sleight of Hand, able to have a little bit more diversity there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. Another consideration is just how hard it is to sideboard against these Is It Phoenix decks. Yeah. It used to be, like we were saying, just so much of it depended on the graveyard, so you want the graveyard hate. Now it's no, I'll slow down. I'm kind of a control-ish deck for a couple of turns. I've got this enchantment that you have to deal with. I still have Thing in the Ice that you want to get off the board. Like Crackling Drake is going to be huge even if you eat my graveyard. And it's all these different angles, and you're like, well, which cards do I want to sideboard in against this? And it actually speaks to how you have to be just so dedicated in the format. I think being proactive instead of reactive, being able to kill the opponent as fast as possible, means you don't have to answer all these various different threats when the game goes longer.
Right. No, that's a fair point, and it speaks in favor of my general approach to Modern, which is get him dead quick.
Sure. Or whatever you're doing, it has to be super unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy when the fairest deck in the format is basically Izzet Phoenix. I mean, maybe humans you can make the argument for, but...
No, I mean, it's not a huge part of the metagame right now, but there are other... Like when people play the green-black deck, that's just a super fair deck, right?
Sure.
When people play Azorius Control, that's a super fair deck.
Right.
You know, super powerful cards in the deck, but it's not doing anything where you're just locked out of the game.
No, that's fair. So we have a Mishra's Bauble to start things off for Bertarioni.
He got to peek at it. The rest of us did not.
I think...
Was that a Blood Moon?
It was a Blood Moon.
Okay, that's...
I think, which is an incredible piece of information to get off Mishra's Bauble, by the way.
Yes, super important to know that right now, so when you still have all your fetch lands at your disposal.
Yep. Let's see if we make it out when Mason puts it in hand. Yeah, Blood Moon.
It's so funny that just this random one of.
Crazy, yeah. And now Mason knows, that Jeremy knows, and the game gets more interesting from there. Cool stuff. Mason going to lead on Spire Bluff Canal. Sends the turn back to Jeremy. Jeremy says, I'll take one. Thanks.
Yeah, it's funny that they did away with mana burn. You used to mana burn yourself.
Right, Jeremy
in order to get your life
found a way.
total down. Yeah, and they're like, no, we'll just give you lands that do that anyway.
Yep. You've heard life finds a way. This is death finds a way. Inquisition of Kozilek is the cast here from Jeremy Bertarioni. Looks at a hand of Lightning Bolt, Arclight Phoenix, Manamorphose, and Blood Moon. And Blood Moon is going to hit the bin. You see no fetch lands in Bertarioni's hand. Not able to play around it. Naturally, going to have to just take it out of Mason's hand.
Sure, and I think if you're on the Death Shadow side, you're actually very happy to see that hand. It doesn't have a whole lot of velocity. It's starting super slow.
Yep.
You're not worrying about Thing of the Ice or Aria, and he doesn't even have a good way to pitch the Phoenix into the graveyard right now.
Right. Just 2 more damage from a Godless Shrine. And here is the Ranger Captain of Eos. Bertarioni falling to 13 from the Silent Clearing. Going to go find a friend. It's Death Shadow.
Okay.
I'll just say it's weird if this is good enough. Like, this doesn't feel like it should be good enough. It feels like not enough power on the board, not enough advantages being gained across these first 3 turns. But I think Bertarioni's honestly in a fine spot right now.
I think it can turn super quick. We've talked at length about all of these cantrips, and so the texture of your opponent's hand can just change instantly. Yeah,
sure.
And he goes from no good payoffs to just all the payoffs. One Faithless Looting and this hand is just great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there you go. You called it.
My lips got ears.
Time for a little Faithless Looting action, I think. That's going to put the Arclight Phoenix in the bin. We have Manamorphose. Any Arclights found this turn, they're coming back.
Well, the opponent can sacrifice the Ranger Captain to kind of put the kibosh on that.
Sure, we'll see if that's an option. I think thus far, Bertarioni not cashing in Ranger Captains, playing it a little close to the vest. Here is Faithless Looting.
And he needs
now
to do it
you
here.
Have to think, yeah, this is the point where you're really carefully considering.
And you really don't want to just sacrifice your only threat on the board, right?
Yeah, I understand the tension, for sure. Faithless Looting is going to resolve.
And, by the time he sees the Phoenix in the graveyard, it's already too late. The opponent can cast Instance or even another sorcery if he wants to.
Sure. 2 Surgical Extractions in Bertarioni's main deck. I'm sure they remain there.
Sure.
He's playing in such a fashion that I would buy him holding one here, quite frankly. There's Lightning Bolt on that Ranger Captain. Phoenix time? It's coming back.
Well, it's also possible that, sure, Jeremy does not have the surgical, but he also doesn't mind taking the damage because the Death Shadow just got so big.
Very true.
And this was going to be the first turn that he was going to be able to deploy a Death Shadow because of his life total. Mm-hmm. So potentially he's got another one in his hand.
We shall see.
So if he just goes double Death Shadow here, maybe triple Death Shadow, whatever, like that is daunting for Mason to be looking at on the other side.
No, absolutely. You are right. Of course, Mason cantrips available. Going to be able to go troll for some answers if that is the case. Finale of Promise in hand.
Yeah, that's a good one. Average card.
Does some very silly things in this Is It Phoenix deck. Bertarioni really thinking carefully about this turn. This is the key turn, no question. What's step one? Do myself a little damage. Gonna fall to 9. Cast Unearth.
Okay.
I like this one. Keep in mind, Ranger Captain, great response to Finale.
Yes, definitely. And we're looking at multiple Death Shadows this turn, like I said.
4 4s out of Lightning Bolt range. Precarious life total. Arclight Phoenix already on the battlefield, ready to soar over. Have to worry about just getting burned out. But here come 2 Death Shadows. This game poised on a knife's edge right now.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where if you don't kill the Death Shadow player, they potentially have lethal the next turn.
Absolutely. You want to do all your damage in one burst. Here's an opt. Mason having a think. I'm rooting for Aria Flame, I'll be honest. Nothing against Jeremy. I think the deck is neat.
Oh, yeah, look at you. Just no dog in the fight, huh?
The blowout would be sweet, though, I'll be honest. So Mason going to take his draw. He finds an Arclight Phoenix. Interesting find there with Lightning Bolt in hand.
Yep.
Can he put together a sequence to just end the game right now? It looks like Ranger Captain has been cashed in.
Okay. So real hard to put together that sequence.
Right.
Obviously, there's the option of just hard casting the Phoenix.
I think if you do that, you're just playing defense, which is fine.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
So you hard cast the Phoenix. You can go double chump block. And the next turn, you've got your Lightning Bolt and your Finale.
Right.
Bring the Phoenixes back.
Sounds
finish
great.
the game.
Sounds great. I'm in on that plan. Let's see if that's what Mason wants to go for here. There's the Arclight Phoenix. Passes the turn back.
There's the consideration of attacking with one of the Arclight Phoenixes, but I just think that's super risky.
Yeah, I think it's too risky. I like the way Mason played this turn. Can Jeremy find a way to deal with these Phoenixes? A lot of options in hand. Pretty full grip.
The way the game's played out, just every turn there's just like the most ridiculous blowout cards possible.
Yep.
It's just like Aria Flame from the one side would just be insane. A surgical extraction from the other side is just like bonkers. There's so many things going on. This is what makes Modern so great, right?
Yeah. Yeah, despite all the nonsense, there's been some really interesting stuff happening. Here's a Thoughtseize.
Oh, what a good card.
Is it, though? Because Jeremy's dead unless there's something to answer at least one of these Arclight Phoenixes.
Sure. We're going to see if there's a path. It looks like a path to exile in the hand.
Yep, you are correct. And I think Jeremy should be at 7 life presently.
Yep.
now reflected on the scoreboard.
And
no basics. No, there's one.
I was about to say, I'd be surprised if there's not another basic here. And so I mean, this is so wild. 7, obviously the perfect life total if you know your opponent has a Phoenix and a Bolt.
And a Lightning Bolt, yeah.
We might just get the 2 or 3 or 4 redraws here out of the Is It Phoenix deck.
Beats headed Mason's way. Mason's going to head to the top of the library, takes a draw. Didn't catch it. Did you catch it?
Was it an Aria Flame?
It's red. He pulled aside 3 mana, but there's a Faithless Looting in the bin as well. I don't think that's an Aria.
He's shuffling so fast.
I think it may be a Flame Slash, actually.
Okay.
In which case, Faithless Looting time. Absolutely.
Another Phoenix would do it here.
I think we found 2 lands. We did. Steam Vents and Island. Not what Mason was looking for. So now if that is a Flame Slash, which I'm not 100% sure on, he Flame Slashes his Phoenix, bolts, gets Phoenix's back.
No, well, the one got pathed.
Okay.
So he doesn't have that as an option. What he can do, he can Flame Slash Bolt to take down
one
a Death Shadow.
Gotcha.
Chump block, and then hope for another turn.
And that is what we're going to see here. Here is Flame Slash. Here is Lightning Bolt. That Death Shadow dies. And Mason forced to pass the turn back. Bertarioni has a play, though. It's Fatal Push. And that's going to tie things up. And I believe we have been holding our third and deciding match. Is it Phoenix versus Humans, Jonathan Hobbs and Kane Rianhard. And we're going to get to see that one now. So a nice full slate of Magic for you folks here. All 3 matches we're going to get to check in on.
Yeah, that was a great match. That is
absolutely.
Super slim margins. You saw the players had tons of decisions that they could make, which is what you hope for in a healthy environment, right? Like
absolutely.
Like the turn 2 kills where one player just didn't get to do anything, not so much what we're looking for. I still think that's super fun to see.
Yeah.
But ultimately it doesn't make for a healthy environment.
And I like the way both players played that match as well. I thought we saw very good play from both sides. Always like to shout out tight technical play. Both players thinking carefully through their options. But in the end, Mardu Death Shadow looking pretty impressive in its debut. Narrow margins, but it got there. I think that deck's going to have a lot of narrow wins in that fashion.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a grindy deck, right? Like, it depends on the early turns to have that discard and a couple of cheap removal spells to interact with the opponent. And it's rarely going to have the game where, it just goes, like I'm on the board.
Absolutely, yeah.
Humans will have those games. Hogak will have those games. Even Is It Phoenix will have those games. Some decks playing a little more fair, you're never going to have those games.
Sad to give up that nut draw potential, I think. But we'll see if it works out for these Mardu Death Shadow pilots as the day goes on. We're into our next game now, though. It is Humans versus Is It Phoenix, and you see Jonathan Hobbs has built an impressive battlefield. Thalia's Lieutenants championing the parish, Reflector Mage, in multiples, many of which wearing counters. Jonathan Hobbs with the classic Humans mana base, Cavern of Souls, 5-color lands, not the newer Jeskai versions we've seen. And in a good position right now against Kane Reinhardt's Is It Phoenix deck. Kane going to go ahead and cast Crackling Drake.
Yeah, and it looks like Kane is he's kind of holed up right now where he's just like, all right, I can take a little bit of damage from some attackers. I'm going to sculpt a hand and a board that potentially can one-shot you.
Yep.
Like if I flip this thing in the ice.
I don't know if you're a Pokemon TCG player, Craig, but we call that OTK, one-turn kill, over there in those parts.
The Pokemon TCG?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not familiar.
I'll teach you. We'll play.
Okay.
We'll play between the next rounds.
Sure.
I actually don't play anymore, but I do know that's how they refer to it. OTK, one-turn kill, and it's very common in the Pokemon TCG. Less common here in Magic, but Kane Rianhard setting up for it right now.
Probably never happens in Pokemon, right?
Oh, Pokemon's a wild game, Craig. If you like Time Twisters and Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, it's 0 mana Wheel of Fortunes.
Or do I have the game for you? We're not here to talk Pokemon. We're here to talk Magic. Very interesting game going on, and a deciding game as well. Whoever wins this will take down the match for their team. Here's Athalia's Lieutenant. That battlefield just got a whole lot bigger. And Kane's going to have to figure out some blocks.
Yeah, and I still think this isn't terrible if you're on the Izzet Phoenix side.
Mm-hmm.
You can line up your Drake to trade with something. Look how big that freaking graveyard is, right? And then you can chump block with your Phoenix, and he has so many cards in hand, I can't imagine it wouldn't just come back again the next turn.
Right.
And meanwhile, the opponent's just committing more and more cards. It is a little awkward when they've got the Vial on 3.
Scary.
Well, you flip your thing in the ice, and the Reflector Mage immediately comes down and ships it back to the hand.
Right.
And you can't even redeploy it.
Right. Let me ask a question. Is the fact that it bounces Awoken Horror change it at all?
Oh,
you
man,
can
yeah, you're right.
redeploy Thing in the Ice.
Sure. No, you're correct. Oh, there's too many interactions in
Modern.
Modern.
I know. Don't feel bad, Craig.
Okay, he had another Reflector Mage.
Yeah, and just going to go ahead and fire it off here. So Kane's going to have to line up some blocks.
This is actually much scarier for him. Huh. I like this.
Looks like 9 going to be getting through, and Kane falling to 1 under these blocks.
Yep, the Vial's tapped down now.
I think this is how you have to play it. You have to rely on that flip Thing in the Ice to do something. And looks like we are going to block that way. You see Kane's life total falls to 1. Only a Thing in the Ice in play, but we know that Thing in the Ice is going to do some flipping. Now it's on Kane to find a way to reestablish himself on the battlefield and never take damage again for the rest of this game. It's a tall ask.
It is, especially when you're staring down all those Reflector Mages on the other side.
Absolutely.
You just send them all back to the hand, and it's just like, all right, I'll send all of your things back to your hand.
Yep.
Which wouldn't be a big deal, but he's at 1 life. That being said, he has tons of play left in this game. It looked like he had a Lightning Bolt in his hand, another Thing in the Ice. He's got the Phoenix in the graveyard. There's still a lot of play left in this game.
Yeah, he's got access to some burst damage, and I like this step as well, some backup for that Thing in the Ice. Now that's where things could get interesting with 2 Reflector Mages, because it's possible you could have both Thing in the Ice and Awoken Horror targeted by a Reflector Mage, and then Thing in the Ice will not be able to come back down.
Oof. Another Phoenix, that's huge.
Yep. That's certainly going to hit the bin here.
He's going to be able to flip this thing, double Phoenix, get in for a whole boatload of damage here, and then the opponent's actually on the back foot.
Right, and then he bolts in finales, and the game's wrapped up just like that.
Yeah.
I think Kane's on the precipice of finding a winning line. Obviously still in a very vulnerable position.
Well, I love the patience that it looks like he was showing throughout this game, where he was setting up the board, he was waiting until he had enough mana. Now he's got multiple Phoenixes, and just it looks like he was just super patient. He didn't worry about flipping the Thing in the Ice too soon. Went all the way to 1 life.
And it's Lightning Bolt time. That Thing going to go ahead and flip.
Ooh, no, are we forgetting our Phoenixes?
Well, he's only cast 2 spells thus far, right? Flashback, Faithless Looting, Lightning Bolt.
Oh, man.
He's lacking the red source to cast another spell, right? Yeah, no blue spell.
Well, he does. Okay. He still has a fine plan here.
Right, Finale Bolt, 2 Phoenixes attack.
Yep.
Let's see if Hobbs leaves up that Aether Vial to answer it via Reflector Mage. It's hard. He's got to get back on the battlefield. Ancient Ziggurat from Hobbs. Man, this game's tight too. These games have been very good,
Oh,
Greg.
it's so fun.
Very good games of Magic.
Yeah, in a format that has the potential to just be very lopsided, having these really close games just makes it so fun.
Hobbs tapping some mana. Thing in the Ice is going to head-to-hand. Here's Thalia's Lieutenant. Reflector Mage gets pumped.
Oh, this is a risky game, friendo. He's wondering if he wants to put the trigger on the stack and use the vial right now.
Yeah. Looks like the answer is no. Kane's going to take the turn back. Takes his draw. Can't make out the exact contents of Kane's hand, but you know he's trying to put together lethal here. There's a Flame Slash.
Yeah, so he's bottlenecked on red mana here.
Right.
We know that he wants to cast the Finale because it automatically turns on the Phoenix.
Basically has to. Basically has to cast the Finale.
But if one of the cards that he goes for is Manamorphose, like he can get more red mana out of that. If he goes for Faithless Looting, there's just tons of redraws to find a mountain.
I don't know if we have Manamorphose in the bin. Do you see one?
Oh, it's very possible we don't.
It might be the very first card. We won't speculate on that. We'll see exactly what Kane targets once he casts this Finale.
Well, and also you can only target one instant, so it's possible you just want the Lightning Bolt anyway.
Sure,
here.
Very true. You see Kane really thinking through exactly what he wants to do here. It is going to be Finale. First target, Lightning Bolt.
There's just so many options.
Right. Second target, Faithless Looting. Yeah. That is the plan.
So I almost like starting with the Faithless Looting before the Lightning Bolt.
Lightning Bolt has been cast, I believe. There's Lava Dart. Interesting. Lava Dart potentially representing lethal on the next turn, but Kane has to survive. That's the problem here.
Yep. Well, Lava Dart can still help him. Maybe not. I mean, with multiple Reflector Mages, he's in a pretty tough spot.
Right.
He needed another red source just in the worst way there.
I think you're right. And there weren't all that many left in the deck, quite frankly. He can't fetch, can't shock.
Yep.
Here come those Phoenixes. And Kane knows there's Reflector Mage in hand for Hobbs.
Yes. Yeah, he just, like, the red source, and he closes out the game this turn.
Right. Yeah, I think he can't attack here. He has to Lava Dart the Thalia's Lieutenant in response to the Reflector Mage. And then he gets another turn, potentially.
Well, no, because there's another Reflector Mage coming next turn.
He's got 3 Reflector Mages in total?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I believe 3 got bounced back to his hand.
I thought it was 2. If you're right, then he's dead. But I remember there being 2. We'll see how that shakes out. Here's a bounce on the Awoken Horror. There is a third one.
Yep.
You are correct. And I think Hobbs is going to know he's good to go here. Takes a draw. Was that a 4th Reflector Mage? Here's Reflector Mage bouncing Arclight Phoenix. Here's another Reflector Mage. And Hobbs is going to take down Kane Rianhard.
Jeez,
2 games
so
to
close.
1. All of these games were on a razor's edge. And you see the players looking honestly fatigued. Everyone in this feature match area looks absolutely exhausted right now, and you can